Every year, we say that the week 2 main slate is the best main slate of the entire year. And based on initial research for week 2 this year, I think we're going to say the same thing about this slate. There are guys who got good usage in week 1 who may go overlooked. There are some pretty obvious plays who I think are justifiable chalk in tournaments and obvious cash game plays as well, and some fun games to stack. Today, we're going to break down which games we want to stack, break down those potential chalk players, how to handle them for cash games and tournaments, and our top plays across the board for FanDuel and NFL DFS. Welcome on into the Heat Check, a FanDuel Research podcast. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a managing editor for FanDuel Research, joined here as I am every Thursday by Brandon Gdula. Check him out on X at Gdula13. Find his work at FanDuel Research, where he is a senior managing editor. Brandon, week 2 is here. How you doing today?
Good. Week 1 was solid. Could have been better. Could have been a lot worse. It was not the best football, though, to me. Maybe that's just me.
I guess maybe we got game.
Well, maybe we got spoiled.
Come on.
Maybe we got spoiled a little bit with a good Thursday. I was all right with Friday because I had Saquon Barkley in a home league, which I needed. But Sunday, I don't know. I didn't feel as engaged for most of the day. Solid Sunday night game, of course, went into overtime. But I think a lot to discuss in terms of a pretty noticeable trend where the league just decided, hey, we're gonna run the ball. I got some notes on that. So I don't know. What do you think of week 1?
So they decided to run the ball, but they did so efficiently, which is why I'm not gonna get too up in arms about it. Cause the run game is aesthetically pretty pleasing. So as a football watcher, I actually do enjoy a good ground and pound game. And it wasn't at the expense of efficiency. So points were about league average. I think it was 45 on average. And that's about where the bookmakers had totals last week too. So weirdly, it wound up being okay. So I find it kind of exciting if we can see some good balance, some good ground games. I'm actually okay with that. And from a DFS perspective, I was pretty happy with our process where we discussed last week. Yeah, like you said, could have been better. Evan Ingram flopped. There were some other guys. Drake London flopped, but we talked about having mistake erasers last week, and I was able to have a good week because of those mistake erasers, like Josh Allen, Tyreek Hill, guys like that, who we liked a lot in the podcast and were able to get us as upside weeks to overcome the duds we had elsewhere. So I could view it as could have been better, and I do view it that way, but also thankful for those mistake erasers to still make it a very profitable week, despite the fact I did make some pretty big mistakes. We're going to make mistakes every week, and we'll do the same this week too. So trying to find guys who can nullify those mistakes. And I think, Brandon, there are a good number of those this week too.
Yeah, we've got a couple lower salaried options that I think we can feel pretty good with, taking advantage of some primetime games and when the slate posted.
Yeah.
And we got to decide how heavy we can go. I mean, one's a running back, one's a receiver. The two that I'm thinking of in particular.
There are 2 receivers.
2 receivers.
They played in the same game last week.
Who's the other one?
Jamison Williams.
Isn't he the obvious one?
Oh, Cooper Kupp's the obvious one, I thought. What?
I was talking about low salaried options.
He's low salaried compared to his role. So I'm going to go ahead and go with yes on that one.
Oh my gosh, man. I'm saying
we didn't get a good argument in last week. We got to start things off fresh this week. The people want what they want.
I'm specifically saying hey, we got some traditional value plays as in low salaried.
Like Cooper Kupp.
With yeah, I love Cooper Kupp as well, and his salary is too low.
Uh-huh.
We need to move past this.
We can move past.
You know what I'm talking about.
I do. Sometimes we got to get back in the groove and needle each other a bit. We can get past it by reminding people to make sure they're subscribed to the FanDuel Research Podcast feed, wherever they get their podcasts. We're here with you every Thursday, breaking down that week's main slate. Also live on the FanDuel YouTube page at 10 a.m. Eastern. Shout out those of you watching YouTube right now. If you're watching there, leave us a thumbs up. We appreciate all of you as always. Don't forget, check out the show on FanDuel TV Plus as well. You can watch the Heat Check, covering the spread, Up and Adams, all in the same place. FanDuel.com/ match. Watch and log in with your FanDuel account. And then also you can find FanDuel TV Plus on your Amazon Fire, Apple TV, or Roku device. Football is back, and there's no better place to get in on the NFL action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now all customers, yes, all customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. Plus, with FanDuel, you don't even have to leave the app to access real-time stats and data to help you make even more winning bets. Download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Must be 21 plus and present in select states, or 18 plus and present in DC. Offer ends 9/22/24. After 3-week free trial, the full price of NFL Sunday Ticket will be automatically charged seasonally. Cancel anytime, no refunds. Terms, restrictions, and embargoes apply. YouTube TV base plan required to watch YouTube TV. Redemption requires a Google account and current form of payment. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat Connecticut. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Now, Brandon, we alluded to this earlier on, but our slate overview for week 2, I think, comes down to those lower salary guys we're alluding to earlier on as being, how hard do we go at Jordan Mason if there's no McCaffrey? How hard do we go at JMO? How hard do we go at Kupp? And I think kind of balancing that both for cash gains and tournaments, but also for me, beyond those guys, it's assessing which players had really good usage in week 1, but did not blow up, because we know that there is a lot of point chasing in DFS. Our research has shown that. And some of these guys didn't put up big point totals, but their usage was really, really good. So that to me is like the 2 key pillars this week is building around the core guys who are actually good, and then identifying guys who may go under rostered because their point total may not reflect how good their usage was in week 1. What are the key pillars for you in week 2?
Yeah, the part about looking at usage more than results. That's why, I mean, to sum it up, there's a lot of reasons I like week 2. It's because I get to dig through like a bunch of data.
Yeah,
that's fun. And it's not to the point where it's like I've been doing this for 14 straight weeks, but
right.
it's getting that information and trying to react to that while factoring in, okay, Cortland Sutton, a lot of opportunity. Amari Cooper, a lot of opportunity. What do we do with that?
Yeah.
Opportunity without the results. How do we balance that? There's no one correct answer because you have to factor in matchup, the rest of the slate. But having the low salary plays, including someone whose salary is almost $8,000, of course, for Jim. I'm not saying you can play anyone you want, because that would imply that you're going to play Jordan Mason and Jameson Williams in every lineup. Like, that's not what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of flexibility. So what do? Do you try to get up to, the high salaried receivers like a CeeDee Lamb, whose usage was good, results were fine,
3 rush attempts,
or do you try to avoid the chalk a little bit more? Like, how do you sort of approach that? And also, one of the things I started to do last year, and this all goes back into this, is tracking touchdowns, because you always score back to back. I mean, let me start over. Scoring is random enough where, like, you're not going to score every game. You might score 2 games in a row, 3, 4 games in a row. But long term, that's going to balance out, especially for like wide receivers, just because they don't score like double-digit touchdowns very often. It's always the one thing that I have to relearn in the offseason. So it's balancing, okay, who produced, who scored touchdowns, whose salary is elevated now, and then compared to who had a solid game or solid usage, didn't score, salary didn't really change, salary came down. Thinking like a Zay Flowers, for example. It looked like they wanted to get him involved. He didn't do a ton. Salary is in that he's the new Jason Kokrak for anyone who's listened to our golf podcast, 7 years ago. But
don't go to live, Zay Flowers, please.
Right at 6,300. Like, it's figuring all that out. That's why I like week 2 so much.
And one of the guys you alluded to who had a touchdown last week but did not get the salary bump because he played on Monday night is Jordan Mason. So let's dig into the injuries impacting week number 2. Christian McCaffrey at risk of missing his second consecutive game, according to ESPN's Adam Schefter. McCaffrey limited in practice Wednesday, but he was limited all last week too and ultimately sat. In week 1, Jordan Mason, 28 carries, 1 target for 152 yards. So if McCaffrey sits, Brandon, is Mason just a free square for you in basically every lineup? And how would you view Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and George Kittle if McCaffrey does not go?
Yeah, I don't love that term at this point just because it implies like there's no risk, but the reality is the workload for Mason was too good at this salary to overthink. And I think the most interesting part of this is when we get value backs, we're doing a couple things. We might be assuming that a value back has a role. We already got that out of the way. We saw this. That's different than normal whenever a starter's out. We'll talk Zach Charbonnet in a little bit. If Kenneth Walker's out, what's his role? We can assume, we can kind of guess. Like we saw Jordan Mason's going to be the guy, and he looked great. The other thing is with value backs, it's okay. Value back gets you 15 FanDuel points. What if Christian McCaffrey puts up 40? Well, in this case, Christian McCaffrey's out of the equation by default, which is hard to overstate the importance of that to me. Because if you have Christian McCaffrey in a game like this, where they probably should be able to do whatever they want offensively, that's super appealing. In Mason's favor. So, yeah, I think you're overthinking it if you try to avoid Mason a lot in tournaments. I'm not saying every lineup, of course. If he has 78 yards, he's not going to burn you for not using him, but he lets you get up to those mistake erasers. I don't want to say I'm just as intrigued by Deebo Samuel, but I'm very intrigued by Deebo Samuel. Great usage again.
Mm-hmm.
We know he's a phenomenal player. The salary is very reasonable. I know I never have to talk you into Deebo for the most part, but where are you with? You called Mason sort of a free square. I'm assuming that's reflective of sort of how you feel.
Yeah. And that does not come at the expense of Deebo. I'm okay using both. I know we talked last week about how with the FanDuel scoring changes, having bonuses, how it lowers the incentive to have overlap between receiver and running back teammates. I'm okay with that here, even though Deebo's appeal is because he gets red zone rush attempts, which come at the expense of Mason. I still think that both these guys can pay off in the same lineup. They did last week. Deebo had 16.2 FanDuel points, Mason 24 point something. So that's good. I also, though, don't want to ignore Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle. Ayuk salary $7,000. He said he felt rusty in week 1. He said he didn't want to watch the tape until Wednesday morning because he felt so bad about how he played. But he's indoors and probably not going to garner a lot of attention. And then Kittle, the Midwest narrative, both Kittle and Purdy played football in Iowa, back in the Midwest. So Kittle, $6,400. We know he has immense upside. Tight end was doggy do in week 1. So if you can find a guy with juice, kind of hard not to love that. So ranking them Mason 1, Deebo 2, but I want to make sure I get Ayuk and Kittle in there for tournaments. So to me, really does set up well to be high on all the 49ers here. Mason, probably like a 90% kind of guy.
Yeah.
Ish. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty fair here.
Yeah. And I mean, just for everyone can see the rush attempts, the yardage, but 63% of the red zone carries, over 80% of the snaps, and over 90% of the red zone snaps for Mason, which is, again, tied. The other thing, too, with a lot of value backs that might be there aren't many offenses as good as the 49ers offense. So you're typically saying, okay, this team might score once or twice. If it doesn't go to this value back, then what's he really going to get us? They should have a lot of scoring opportunities this week.
They certainly should, and we'll talk about the other side of that game later on as well. But first, let's talk about the Rams. Puka Nacua is on IR with a knee injury. Also have issues along the offensive line. Cooper Kupp, as we discussed, under salaried at $7,700. Demarcus Robinson, 52. Tyler Johnson, 4,000. We'll talk more about the Rams in the bookmaker section. Jordan Love is expected to miss week 2 due to a knee injury. Malik Willis will start in his place. Willis, booty in his time in the NFL. Does this cross off all Packers players for you?
Pass catchers, yeah. The thing, what always sort of comes up whenever a team downgrades to a backup quarterback is, well, they're going to use the run game more, so therefore running back gets elevated. And Josh Jacobs is coming off of a 72% snap rate, 24 adjusted opportunities, which is carries plus double your targets, over 100 scrimmage yards. In a vacuum, like, yeah, that's a good to great almost workload with what we saw from running backs in week 1. What would you say to people who were like, well, Jacobs is a great play because he's going to get a lot of work?
I would say I'd rather get hit by a bus.
That low on him?
First one of the year.
Wow.
Marshawn Lloyd, limited in practice Wednesday. Sounds like there's a shot he's able to suit up here. That'd be a downgrade for, I think that Jacobs might have had his best usage of the year in week 1 because Emmanuel Wilson was banged up going into that game. And then Marshawn Lloyd did not play. Jacobs still had like a 71% snap rate or something like that. So like he's 71 tied to a backup bad quarterback. I know they'll run the ball a lot, but I don't expect a lot of touchdown upside. So I'd rather go, Pacheco is 74 in that range. James Conner, 65. We got, of course, Jordan Mason. I'm not going to get to him at a week this good at running back, personally.
Yeah, I don't think I will either, but I think that you'll probably see his name a lot.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably the first one of the year where we say, hey, offensive downgrade might increase usage, but going to decrease efficiency and touchdown probability. And boy, you still need touchdowns, even with the yardage bonuses.
You very much do. Kenneth Walker missed practice with an oblique injury on Wednesday. He said after the game he's fine. He also spoke to the media after the game. Typically, if you're like legit injured, you don't do that. So reading the tea leaves, I think he'll go. He also did miss time with an oblique injury last year, though. But they're on the road against the Patriots. Pretty poor game from a game environment perspective. Any interest in Walker if he goes? And what about Zach Charbonnet if Walker does not go?
I'll get this one out of the way. I'm always historically low on Kenneth Walker. I don't know what it is, but
his usage was pretty sick in week 1.
The usage?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Like, that's the thing is I know it's like a me issue.
Okay.
So he ended up with 2/3 of the snaps, but he played 79% of the snaps. In the first half, he played 80% of the red zone snaps. 26 adjusted opportunities for over 100 scrimmage yards. Like, I get it. It's a me thing. Also, he's a good running back when he gets in space. I think I'm always bogged down by, like, when he came into the NFL, his success rate numbers were not great, but he had a lot of explosive plays. And like that kind of, I think that's always in the back of my mind. The salary's creeping up to 77. I think Charbonnet's a viable back where they don't need to run Kenneth Walker into the ground. And I don't know, like New England might make that game just really messy, ugly it up. So I'm out on Walker.
Yeah.
Charbonnet without Walker at 6,300 could be appealing, but I still don't know if I'd quite get there. Yeah. There are a good number of backs I'm into this week.
Yeah. My hope this week is that Walker plays and has a modest game so I can buy into him at a lower salary in the future because his usage was really good in week 1 and new coaching staff that seems to like him quite a bit. So I think that's what I'll be doing here. I agree with you on Charbonnet. He'd be a fine play. He'd be more of like a 30%er kind of guy. And this week that might be on the lower end of like players in my player pool because I think I'm going to commit to the guys I like most. So lower there for sure.
Yeah.
T. Higgins didn't practice Wednesday again due to his hamstring injury. Likely puts him on the wrong side of questionable. In that same game, Marquise Brown did not practice. We'll address the Chiefs and the Bengals in the bookmaker section. Broncos had neither Josh Reynolds nor Devon Vele in practice on Wednesday. They were the number 2 and number 3 receivers in week 1 for Bo Nix. So Courtland Sutton, a lot of volume there, not a lot of production. How would you view Courtland Sutton against the Steelers if either Reynolds or Vele or both cannot go?
Yeah, Sutton, a lot of empty usage, 12 targets, 4 catches, 160 air yards, which I think put him second in the league last week.
Which means he also had like 175% of the team's air yards.
He had 62% of the team's air yards. Yeah, he was second to Amari Cooper. Courtland Sutton, man, we think he's good. We've talked about him for years. It feels like nothing's changed, where it's kind of on him to go out and make plays. I have really tried to gather my notes, think my thoughts, and then look at the slate, look at salaries. When I saw Courtland Sutton at 54, I was like, yeah, he'll be viable in like the low 6,000 range or whatever. I don't even know what his salary was last week because I just wasn't interested.
Yeah.
But man, 5,400 for a player of this caliber who got peppered like this, that's really appealing.
Yeah, it's hard to turn down 12 targets at 54. And Demarcus Robinson is 52, which means he'll probably suck up a lot of helium in that range. Jameson is 57. It's just like, what happens? Like, what's his best case scenario? Is it 100 yards and a touchdown? Like, that's doable here.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like Pittsburgh's defense might just be like that. Like we had the Browns at home last year. There are just certain like teams where you're like, yeah, but man, there's probably not a lot that's going to happen here.
Right.
Denver's implied team total 17 points. That's higher than only 2 other teams.
Yeah.
On the board. Pittsburgh's going to run the ball, especially if they have Justin Fields. Play volume could get down. I would not be surprised if Courtland Sutton has like 9 targets and it's a 40, like kind of like a Michael Pittman game last week where he had, I think, a 42% target share, but the Colts just barely had the ball. It could be something like that. So the one thing here is if you went with a Justin Fields, George Pickens, Courtland Sutton stack, would you be interested in that?
Well, speaking of that, Fields going to start this week, it sounds like, for the Steelers on the road against the Broncos. Total for that game overall, 36.5. I did take the over. It's my one sicko bet of week 2 is the over for that game. I'm not going to disclose my other sicko bet. I personally don't feel the need to. Like, Fields ran a lot in week 1. That was indoors. Against an offense that in theory would have given them more pushback. So I don't think that the upside is there. I don't want to burn 3 roster slots in this game personally.
Yeah, you got to get everything else right. And you have to ask yourself, what are the odds that, like, man, I didn't have exposure to that 37 point total, this week. That doesn't happen very often. I will just say, like, George Pickens could be one of those guys who, if you need a one-off, if there's a semblance of life on the other side and you just like need to, or you're really into the other side and you need like a semblance from the weaker side. Pickens had a 7 targets for 85 yards, 75% of the team's air yards. Like, things might change if they go back to Russell Wilson, etc. But I don't know if I can get there.
Yeah. He's going to see Patrick Surtain, who was on DK Metcalf last week. They shadowed Metcalf with him, and I'll buy in at some point, but not right now. Dalton Schultz missed practice Wednesday with an ankle injury. He split some reps with Brevin Jordan on Sunday against the Colts, much to your dismay as you were slacking me like immediately during that game. Would a Dalton Schultz injury up your interest in the Texans pass catchers against a very good Bears defense?
I mean, it's one of those, like, he shouldn't really impact things, but he ended up with an 81% route rate, 10% target share. He's not irrelevant. Like, Brevin Jordan's good. He could just probably slot in and take that same usage. So it's probably not a lot of change with the rest of the pass catchers. What's Jordan's salary? Actually, now that I'm here. In the late game, 45.
I mean, To me, it's all
No, I was gonna get there, but
yeah. I love Brevin Jordan's an awesome. Like at Miami, he was sick. I had him in a lot of 2 tight end dynasty leagues. RIP. I would love for him to pop back up. I don't think I have him anymore because I think I dropped him. But like he's a good player. I just think that this game is all to me like Tank Dell. I think might be one of my favorite plays for tournaments on the entire slate.
Yeah, so Diggs had the 2 touchdowns. His salary shot up to 75. Nico Freako Collins just out there like vintage Cortland Sutton, if you want to like kind of talk about Cortland Sutton, making plays while playing with one of the league's best quarterbacks. So that's awesome. But lost in all of that is Tank Dell, who had a better target share than Stephon Diggs. He had 2 carries for 19 yards. I can't believe I had to remind you last week that Tank Dell was getting carries. He's still getting carries, and that's with Joe Mixon getting like 900 carries himself.
Tank also had 3 out of 5 deep targets for the team. Nico had the other 2. Like I think I know the results favored Dell or Diggs, but I'd rather have Dell's usage than Diggs right now.
Yeah, so your deep targets are 16 plus yards. Yeah. So if you look at 10 plus, there were 8 between the receivers. Nico and Tank split them 4 equally.
Perfect.
And Tank had an end zone target. So I'm with you. Yeah. This is like going into the season, it was, man, how are they gonna split the work here? There's a perfect example too of what I expect to happen. If Tank scores twice or has a great game,
we're on Nico next week.
His salary's going to go up. I think like I don't want to downplay Stephon Diggs, but a 2 touchdown game is usually like gonna raise someone's salary way too much, and that's what we saw. His usage was fine. He had a 19% target share. His ADOT was tiny though, 1.6 yards. So I think that's something to track as we go throughout the year. But yeah, it's going to be a rotation. There's going to be a little bit of guesswork, but do you like this game enough where you would, are you going to play Nico as well?
Potentially, because I think that mini stacks are in play. Because on the opposing side, Roma Dunze didn't practice on Wednesday with a knee injury. He's unlikely to play. Keenan Allen also didn't practice Wednesday with a heel injury. It seemed like he aggravated that late in the game on Sunday. He was limping after a long target. So I think he'll play. But DJ Moore's salary 68, Keenan 65. Likely Noah Dunze. We get Caleb Williams indoors against a Texans defense that I don't mind, but didn't play very well last week. So I think that a Tank Dell, DJ Moore Sunday night hammer stack is pretty fun. And I think that's where I'm going to likely wind up going. How are you viewing the Bears?
Yeah, so I'm doing a stock up, stock down article on FanDuel Research where what it ended up being was just kind of blurbing every fantasy relevant player. And I had to decide, like, do I think the stock's up, down, or stayed the same for these receivers, specifically DJ Moore and Keenan Allen? And I had them as stock up for a while. I did change it to just sort of steady because I think even if Odunze plays, he was running behind Keenan Allen and DJ Moore. And Moore, look, there wasn't a lot to get excited about with this offense from a passing game standpoint. 93 yards from Caleb Williams in his debut. That's a little tough. But DJ Moore played all 3 red zone snaps, 87% of the snaps overall and in the first half. And he had 2 of 6 downfield targets between the receivers. I will note Keenan Allen, though. I really want to watch that practice report because his usage was even better.
Oh, yeah.
His routes and snaps were a little bit lower, but the usage itself was better. 2 red zone targets, 2 end zone targets, some downfield looks, like downfield. I don't know what your numbers would say there, but
downfield, yeah.
Higher ADOT than DJ Moore, like not what I expected.
No.
I was kind of thinking people were a little too low on Keenan Allen coming into the year, and then like, okay, probably gonna not play at 100% efficiency for a lot of the year, so I get it. But I think these 2 with Tank make a lot of sense for those Sunday night mini stacks.
Yeah. Any Stroud for you? Stroud salary $60 or $8,200. I do like the Bears defense, but it's also CJ Stroud at home indoors.
Yeah, I mean, spoiler alert, we're going to test a little bit of a different format for player picks at the end. For anyone again who listens to our golf show, they know we do like loves and likes. Stroud is clearly a like for me. I don't think I could get there with a love. I try to minimize the amount of quarterbacks I play just because I think the probability of hitting it's worth it because if you're going to be right, you want to be right and you want to get rewarded for that.
Right.
I don't know if I'll quite get there with Stroud because I can easily just mini stack and kind of go elsewhere. So I might get my exposure through Tank Dell, maybe through Nico and through the other side of the game.
I think
but there's also a chance though too that they lean on Joe Mixon a good bit early on.
They could. Mixon's salary this week is $8,100. We'll get to him in the salary scroll section, I am sure. Jordan Addison didn't practice on Wednesday due to an ankle injury. Seems like he's on the wrong side of questionable here. How does Addison's likely absence alter your view of Justin Jefferson against the Niners and any interest in Jalen Naylor as a value play here?
I mean, Jefferson did some work as expected, 6 downfield targets, or 6 targets overall, 2 downfield and an end zone look. I don't know. This is such whiplash of like, okay, Vikings looked good against the Giants. Sam Darnold looked rejuvenated. I guess it is a Sam Darnold revenge game.
It is.
What wins out here? I guess the 49ers are on a short week if there's anything we want to kind of spin there, but I am going to struggle to love Justin Jefferson at these high salaries in bad matchups for now whenever we have alternatives. Like if I'm going Justin Jefferson or Cooper Kupp straight up, like out of 10 lineup decisions, how many of those are you going Kupp? Probably
9.
That's kind of like where I was. So I don't know if I need to force it this week.
Jefferson or Jamar Chase?
Probably Chase in that.
Jefferson or Amon-Ra?
I think Amon-Ra is still really appealing.
Jefferson or Lamb?
Lamb. Now I'm waiting for Jay Jettas to dunk all over me, but
I agree with you too. So at least we'll go down together.
I guess you can continue. I'll bring it back up later if I remember.
What was it? What were you gonna say?
Well, I was trying to do the math. So 14-4. Yeah.
Oh,
so if
Mason?
you were like,
you're
like, okay, you can play Jordan Mason and Justin Jefferson for 72 apiece. Like, would you do it?
Yeah. I mean, like that makes sense, but I'd rather game stack Cardinals Rams. I'd rather game stack maybe not Cowboys. I'm I think interested in Cowboy Saints, but
yeah, I mean, boy, the two best teams in the league basically based on how they played week 1, just blowouts. But
it's good. Good for my divisional futures. Let's go.
I think we'll learn a lot there. I think what I'm realizing now though is, if we're going to play a lot of Jordan Mason, which we are, everyone is, and you don't believe enough in the Vikings to bring it back, does that change anything for you, or you don't care because it's a running back?
It's not that I don't believe in the offense. It's more so I don't believe in at that salary. Like, I think they'll give enough pushback to be viable. It's more so I just don't want to allocate $8,900 for a quarterback who had flashes at times in Sam Darnold, but like still had his typical issues, and he's facing a much, much, much tougher defense this time around. Granted, is at home indoors, but not as
and I think with like Naylor or Brandon Powell, there's just not enough there to want to get to anyone else.
Yeah, I think with the Rams receivers where they're at, Sutton being where he's at, I'm interested in Naylor for like dynasty season-long leagues, but not for DFS for this week.
Not to linger too long on the Vikings here, but I got to ask about Aaron Jones. Did you see that being a mini stack? Jones
not really. I think there are enough other guys I like more at running back. Again, his salary is $7,000. He got pretty good usage in week 1, 14 carries. Oops, that's the wrong tab. 14 carries and 2 targets in week 1. Yeah. But like still did get subbed out a bit for Ty Chandler. And like part of that was because of fourth quarter, but like Jones actually got a lot of usage in the fourth quarter too. So
he had a 56% first half snap rate. Like he played a lot and then that's kind of rotation started. So yeah,
I'm okay missing out personally. Any interest for you?
Probably not.
Okay. Yeah, I'm receptive to it, but
so
not this week.
Let's put a button on this.
Mm-hmm.
Jefferson and Jones, the only two Vikings were considering, and their game stacks only.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Personally, it's a fine game, but
yeah,
I'm okay with that.
All right.
The best game from a total perspective on the main slate as we transition now to the bookmaker section is once again in Detroit. Is the Lions hosting the Buccaneers. Spread in this game is extended to 7.5. It was 6.5, then 7, now 7.5. Total is 51.5 for this one. The Lions implied total pretty lofty in this one. It is up at 29.5. That is the highest in the main slate by about 3 points. Both offenses were good in week one. Who are the primary targets in this one as you're game stacking it?
Jameson Williams at 57 is the easiest one to justify. You were ready for the breakout last year.
Way too ready for it. Lost a lot of money being ready for it.
Yeah. I warmed up to him over the offseason based on, an increased role for him in the playoffs, although it was more routes, not a lot of targets. The team talked about him a lot. That was appealing. And then he went out and had, yes, the big plays, but 9 total targets, 5 of them at least, 10 yards downfield. Love to see that. Almost 70% of the team's air yards. Kind of want him to cool it because I love Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's one of my favorite players. So this is a little bit of an issue and something we might have to recalibrate with St. Brown the rest of the way. But yeah, Jameson is the best play in the game, right?
Yeah, I think straight up by a pretty good margin.
Yeah.
And I think you can definitely justify running it back on the opposing side with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. And honestly, if you want to make your Jameson Williams lineup more unique, I don't hate the idea of tossing out Jalen McMillan in that lineup too. $5,200 for him. We give you 2 super low salary guys. We were slacking about this earlier on this week. McMillan had a touchdown in week 1, but he had a pass interference where he probably would have scored had he not gotten pass interfered with, had one go off his hands where he was wide open. He was open the entire game. And he is now playing indoors against a team that led up 21 targets to a slot receiver last week. I know, there's Chris Godwin in the slot as well, but McMillan will get some snaps there too. So if you want to make your Williams lineup unique, I don't hate the idea of tossing McMillan in there. So, and honestly, the other idea is, okay, we know that Williams is the better straight up play, but there's a world in which Amon-Ra outscores him. So if you want to have a way to offset Amon-Ra's salary, Amon-Ra St. Brown with McMillan, it's not bad.
Yeah. I sure hope there's a world where Amon-Ra St. Brown can outscore Jameson Williams, but maybe Jim's ready to say that's
it's bizarre world, yeah.
Least likely to less likely to happen, but
yeah,
you're not going to love the usage necessarily for St. Brown if you dig in. 6 targets, 4.6 yard ADOT, 2 red zone targets though, just at 13 yards, but he ran 97% of the routes, catch rate over expectation of minus 26%. Better days are ahead for Amon-Ra, but this team's total is higher than anyone's.
Yeah.
Are we now with Williams a legitimate threat? There's no way that he's going to get just forgotten, right? There's kind of no way.
Absolutely no shot. I know there's a lot of viable plays in this slate, but $5,700 for a guy people like as much as him?
No. Within the offense.
Oh.
After this, do you think he's going to be okay, now he's back to sort of getting 3 targets a game for...
I don't think so. Yeah. I think when you combine the offseason coach speak around him, paired with the usage, and paired with, honestly, the breadcrumbs last year, I think he's legit. He is a very viable piece in this offense going forward.
So what I'm getting in, what I'm ramping into is 2 receivers who probably could command 22% target shares, on the low end. We know Amon-Ra can be in the 30s. Sam Laporta two of the better running backs in football, honestly. It was already a little bit tricky last year because they had the two running backs, St. Brown and Laporta. Is this now like they're going to score points, but maybe nobody has the biggest game because things are dispersed?
That's kind of where I was at on them last week, honestly, is like their salaries are a bit too high for me. And that's still the case for Laporta at 79. I'm not going to get there. I'm just not going to use him this week. I don't think you can burn me at that salary. Amon-Ra, I can only use as a direct pivot off Jameson Williams, basically. Not in play outside of game stacks. So, and like the running backs are also, I think, a bit oversalaried. Gibbs 79, Montgomery 72 against a Bucs defense that may not have Kalijah Kancey again, but does devote a lot of resources to stopping the run. So, like, it's pretty much JMO is like a non-game stacks play for me, personally.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's a reality where Gibbs has a bigger game, Montgomery, but like after what Montgomery did and they rode him at overtime, or we clamoring to play Gibbs? Probably not. Like, they both scored over 15 FanDuel points, but under 16, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Gibbs' usage was fine too. It's just like, I don't want to pay 79 for that when I can pay $100 more for Kyren Williams. So
yeah, like his usage isn't going to change. Like, so I said the same thing about Williams. Is the offense going to forget about Jameson Williams? Are they going to forget about David Montgomery? No, they kind of never were going to do that anyway. And Gibbs was ranked really highly entering the season. It's like, yeah, but he's the 1A in a backfield that's kind of like two 1As, like it's about as even as it gets. So we love this offense.
Yeah.
We obviously, Williams is our favorite play. Are you going to get to the other options very frequently?
I can see myself getting to Jared Goff, given that the Bucs are a team, again, that funnels work towards the pass. So Goff 78, good candidate to get 300-yard bonus that FanDuel has for this year. I think that's intriguing. Amon-Ra, again, game stacks only. I'm not using the Porta. I'm not using the running backs. Pretty easy for me there. What about the Bucs for you and the quarterbacks? Let's talk quarterbacks first, then Bucs.
Yeah. Baker coming to life last week for sure.
Shout out, I think it was Robert. One of our viewers was in the mentions on the comments on YouTube talking about a Baker 303 and Robert, you have little faith. 4 touchdowns for Baker Mayfield in this one.
I didn't get to the bonus though.
Yeah. No, dang.
But yeah, and my expected touchdown numbers had him leading the league after week 1, so it's not all, fluky there.
He also looked good. Like he was creating off schedule, like Shaker Mayfield, 3 for 21 rushing. He looked good. I don't know, like if maybe being a dad has made Baker like more spry. I don't know, but it looked great in week 1.
Well, also looking great in week 1 was Mike Evans.
Oh yeah.
I'm not going to undersell the workload. It's 6 targets, but not all targets are created equally.
Mm-hmm.
I have like a weighted target metric, which gives extra weight for downfield targets, red zone targets, etc. He had 6 targets. He had like the equivalent volume of 10.6 targets because 4 of those were downfield, 3 were in the red zone, and 3 were in the end zone. He can score twice in any game because he's Mike Evans, and that's clearly something that can happen. But the salary's $8,000. There's not a lot of room for a bad game, and he's very sensitive to a bad game where he doesn't score because he had a 20% target share. Chris Godwin looks pretty rejuvenated, and they clearly had plays drawn up for Jalen McMillan, and we could easily be talking about Jalen McMillan. I went back and looked at the tape, factor in the 2 penalties. He kind of had 5 targets. To me, 4 of those could have been touchdowns.
Yes.
Like, I don't want to get out over my skis on that because he still had only a 10% target share. So I'm not going to say, well, that's going to go up. Andy's going to score more efficiently, but this puts me a little bit lower on Evans, and I'm still way more interested in Chris Godwin, whose workload is a little more sustainable. Still a low ADOT, but looked good. Glad you're coming around on him.
Yeah.
And a 27% target share in a game that, he might not have a 27% target share this week, but coming from last week, he's probably my favorite way to go. So kind of got like Godwin and Jameson plus like a Tank Dell DJ Moore.
Is McMillan too thin for you as a play?
Define as a play.
Tournaments, game stack with Jameson Williams.
I could see myself getting there.
Okay.
If you do that and have Mason, you can probably do anything else you want.
Pretty much, yeah.
So that is appealing. But in the past, like past Brandon would have been like, oh no, he was so close to scoring. I figured this out. I cracked the code. 10% target share. Got to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Would have been elevated if like you factor in penalties, but still, it goes back to one touchdown on 3 targets is not enough to make you regret not using someone. That's still clearly within the range of outcomes for McMillan if the target share remains relatively low. So when I can get Jameson Williams, who might be, I mean, he could be in the conversation for one of the best receivers in football at some point with clear like usage indications. It's going to be hard to get to McMillan a lot. But yeah, I would toy around for sure with McMillan, Williams, and Mason stacks. I mean, it's not a stack, but group
combos. Any final thoughts for you on this game?
No.
Okay, let's talk then about our second game. Totals come down for the Rams and Cardinals, now 47.5. Under is -115, so could continue to come down. Understandable, given the Rams offense is super banged up. No Puka Nacua in this game. They have put a couple of offensive linemen in IR. Their left tackle still suspended for one more game. It's a rough situation, but there's also no Puka Nacua, and that opens up a lot of usage for the Rams against a Cardinals defense that looked just as bad in week 1 as they were last year. They could be like Rich Reber used to call the Superdome the Coors Field of DFS. I think the Cardinals defense might be the Coors Field of DFS this year because the offense can score. The defense cannot stop letting up scores. So I know the totals come down. I know there's a lot of injuries to consider here, but what's your view of this game for stacking?
I like it because it's easy to stack, I think. Whereas I talked about with the Lions, hey, there's a lot of options here. With the Rams, I think there's 2.
Yeah.
2.5. The tertiary sort of options are viable, but like if you're kind of building 1 to 5 lineups, you're not going to get to those names anyway. Then it becomes easy to stack.
I might get to Demarcus Robinson.
Right. Like if you play 5 lineups though, are you considering him? Are you that high on him?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, very much so for 5 lineups for sure.
Okay. Talk to me about DeMarcus then.
Yeah, so if you look at the full game, you look at the second half when Nacua was out, Robinson ran the same number of routes as Tyler Johnson. So like that'd be like, okay, Johnson's salary is $4,000. Why am I not going at him as opposed to DeMarcus Robinson? But to me, the bigger thing about Robinson is that he earned targets last year while playing alongside Nacua and Kupp. And that to me says they view him as being a very good player. So Robinson 52, he gets downfield targets. Johnson's ADOT, I believe, was like 4 point something in week 1. Robinson got downfield targets last year. He was up about 2 per game between week 13 and 17. And he got some, I think, deep work in week 1 as well. His ADOT was around 11, if I remember correctly.
DeMarcus, yeah, his ADOT was 11.6. He had 2 targets, 10 plus yards downfield. For Tyler Johnson, 5.3 yard ADOT, but also 2 targets, at least 10 yards downfield.
And they both had 1 red zone target in that game. So I don't think Robinson will catch any attention this week, whereas Johnson probably will because of the salary. So if I'm pivoting off of Kupp, I think Kyren is the best pivot. But DeMarcus Robinson is also pretty fun, and I have no objections to using Robinson and Kyren in the same lineup. And honestly, I would not fully write off having Robinson and Kupp in the same lineup too. I don't think that's totally out of bounds based on their usage and salaries.
If you do that, are you playing Stafford?
I think I'd have to consider it. Probably not realistically. I probably should.
I feel like if you're playing both, what are you expecting from Stafford then for them?
I might use Kyler.
Okay.
So sure. It'd be a game stack, or I'd use Connor at least if I don't use Kyler.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But yeah, DeMarcus Robinson, 94% first half snap rate, 33% for Tyler Johnson, and that's with Puka at 2/3 of the snaps. So, and like you said, last year we saw this. I know it's kind of a bit, but I'm a big DeMarcus Robinson guy.
And I always yelled at you for it, but I've backed off.
Well, I mean, it's a clear sort of trend here. It's
Yeah.
it's a differentiation right now. Good usage. He should be on the field a lot in a game that's definitely appealing. So you're talking me up on Robinson, but I still don't know that it might take me more than 5 lineups to get there, but
Sure.
I guess not.
So if we're at around 90% Mason, where are you on Cooper Kupp?
Not as high just because he's a receiver, but
Sure.
boy, 44% target share, looked great. And there were just plays where it's like, okay, this is an extended run play because Cooper Kupp's going to get open. Matthew Stafford's going to drop back and just throw it to Cooper Kupp for 8 yards. Nobody else really can do that, or there's not a lot of that else like around the NFL.
If I guaranteed you 21 rush attempts out of a back for $7,700, we're probably saying yes to that, right?
That's true, but are you projecting 21 targets for
of
Kupp?
Course. Yeah.
Okay. So
naturally. That's how projections work, right?
I don't know. I think this early on a Thursday without building a ton of different lineups, I'd probably say like 50 to 60% Kupp, which is way high for me for a receiver usually.
I'm saying 70 because of the targets he gets are so high percentage.
That's true.
And we have our motto of ignore the floor, but it also comes with upside.
Yeah, six downfield targets, 3 in the red zone, 1 in the end zone. Weighted target number is 27 if you give him proper. Yeah. So okay. I'll say 65%.
Okay.
Then.
I think I'm at 70. So we're on the same page there. Kyren 8,000 last year against the Cardinals averaged 181 yards from scrimmage across 2 games. And we'll talk about this later on, but there are a couple of guys who had very high snap rates in week 1, but not the best usage. And Kyren is one of those guys, 90% snap rate. And in this matchup, they're going to be able to run the football. The Bills ran the ball like 87 times against the Cardinals in week 1, and were very effective doing so.
Yeah.
It seems like they still like Kyren a lot. He's going to be on the field a bunch. Great matchup. I know the offensive line is banged up, but Kyren 8,000, I think, is one of the best running back plays in the slate. Where are you with him?
Agree. One of the better running back plays on the whole slate on what is kind of an interesting slate for high salaried backs to me. So factor that into the Jordan Mason conversation as well. Sure. But usage was great. I know that there were those concerns coming into the season, but no Puka. I don't really think that's going to change like Kyren's like role or being on the field a lot, but he's going to be on the field a lot, and he's a good football player in a good offense. So I'm not saying he's my favorite running back play, but he's in the conversation for short play Kyren Williams.
Okay, let's talk about the Cardinals side of things here. James Conner in week 1, pretty good usage for him once again, obviously in the red zone specifically, got a lot of work. Trey McBride, 9 targets, didn't do a lot on them, and Marvin Harrison Jr. didn't do a lot either. I'm not super worried about that. We talked in week 1 about how rookies tend to underperform in week 1, so wasn't really on to begin with, and it was also outdoors in pretty heavy winds. Cardinals indoor team back at home here against a lesser defense. I think Connor's the one core play here. I think that both Harrison and McBride are viable as game stacks, though, in Kyren, Kupp, Robinson lineups. How are you viewing that trio specifically?
I agree with you. Connor's the one who I'd play without necessarily any Rams. I think for Marvin Harrison Jr., like I'm with you where not going to overreact. I do think it's a little bit of a stock down situation just because,
sure,
hey, they're not necessarily going to force him the ball right away every matchup. Now, there's a lot of chatter going on of whose fault that is. I don't know if that means this is a squeaky wheel narrative. It doesnthink sound like it's coming from Marvin Harrison Jr. Yeah. It seems like it's between Kyler and
he said himself that like he was a bit overwhelmed. He was thinking too much. So like, I think it's more so from Twitter that's mad, not Marvin.
Look, he led the team in routes at 94% route rate in his debut. That's great. Things are going to get better. They're going to probably scheme up some easy wins for him early on. If they don't, I think it's a big mistake after everything that's transpired this week. So I'm interested. I was kind of hoping the salary would come down, but I also understand why it didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he was 66 last week, so like technically, but you know what I mean.
I think both he and Neighbors are good options as rookies this week. Wasn't on them last week, but I'm there this week.
Squeaky wheels.
You said stock down for Connor. I think I'd agree with that slightly because of the stuff you mentioned, but still very much in play at 65. The Rams got overpowered by the Lions last week, and it's because the Lions are a very good rush offense, but the Cardinals really are too. Even before Kyler returned last year, they were good at that. So I do like Connor again this week, and I also want to give long consideration to Kyler Murray. $8,000 for him. Ran 5 times, 57 yards last week. Didn't do a lot from a production perspective, but again, outdoors in the wind. He is now at home. I think Kyler 8,000 is I would say top tier quarterback play this week. Is that too aggressive?
Well, first of all, I actually have stock up on Connor. I think 46% red zone participation is great.
Okay.
Salary didn't change enough for me. We haven't talked about Lamar yet. We have not talked about really many of the other quarterbacks, Anthony Richardson. But I think Lamar for me is in his own tier this week. And that you don't agree?
I don't like that game enough.
Why?
I care a lot about game environment for quarterbacks, and like I just don't think that's a great game. I think the Raiders defense is pretty good. And like total's 41.5. I know their implied total's pretty high, but like are the Raiders going to get a lot of pushback here?
I think Baltimore coming off of a last second loss. This is one where I think they're going to go out and make a statement. And I think that they can because I think Lamar's that good. Yeah. Maybe that's just me though. Yeah. But yeah, Kyler's in that like second tier conversation for me with some of those other names I listed. Kyler or Jaden Daniels right around the same salary for you?
Kyler. I think Kyler can do more passing right now because he has better options. Like, I just don't know outside of McLaurin what the Commanders have. I also think that like Dexter Lawrence could kill Jaden Daniels at some point during this game, and I'm very worried about that.
Yeah, I think I'm higher on Kyler than Daniels as well. Mm-hmm. But we talked about the passing bonus last week. It's going to be an ongoing conversation. I'm still more interested in the Russian quarterbacks this week.
Yeah, I think so too. Any final thoughts for you on this game?
McBride's a good play still.
I think so too. Okay, let's finish up here with our third bookmaker game. That is the Bengals at the Chiefs. Right now, FanDuel Sportsbook total is 47.5. Chiefs are favored by 5.5 here. For some reason, the Bengals money line shortened. It was 200 something yesterday. It's 194 now. I actually show value in the Chiefs money line now. So that's kind of weird. I thought that we might see an overreaction spot where people are just like super low on the Bengals, but it doesn't seem like that's happening. Offense stunk in week 1 for the Bengals. Now Jamar Chase, maybe more ramped up. T. Higgins didn't practice Wednesday, might be sitting again. How inclined are you to stack this Chiefs versus Bengals game?
Not as inclined as I thought I would be, the more that I think about it, but this could easily be Jamar and Pacheco had great games, or Rashee Rice was undersalaried or had a fair salary. Like, yeah, that was the obvious place to go. I'm not quite there. I probably should be higher on Mahomes. I'm going to like kind of reset everything and talk like about Mahomes, because obviously the whole offense goes as he goes, and still have the ADOT concerns.
Yeah.
I don't love that. Look, super efficient. That's not really the case. Like, that's not the concern. But that low ADOT, just like, what's his ceiling right now?
I still think it's very high.
I think
he was facing Baltimore last week, and they're a pretty sharp defense. And I think the Bengals defense could be hideous this year, especially against the run, but
they could be.
Yeah.
Are they going to open it up, bucking a trend that they've had for 2 years now?
So I think that the ADOT concerns are fair, but I think that when you have Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy and Travis Kelce, those are all guys who can create upside plays without getting the ball super far downfield. Low ADOT, but still more than 10 yards per attempt for Mahomes last week.
Yeah.
So I do think that the upside is very much there. And I think that you were saying that Lamar is in a tier of his own. I think Mahomes is in the top tier with Kyler for me. And I think I actually might like both more than Lamar, as dumb as that may be.
I don't think it's dumb. I think it's fine to think that way, but like Lamar's the quarterback who can get you 100 rushing yards to get that bonus. They did not lean on Derrick Henry quite like I thought. We can talk about that later, but like,
yeah,
for me, Mahomes in this game environment against the Bengals, I should be like, yeah, I really want to get to Mahomes. I'm not to that point, and I think that's like probably a me thing, but I need to figure out why.
Yeah. I think that the other thing with Mahomes that's very fun is that we have a pretty obvious stat candidate in Rashee Rice. There was a YouTube comment asking about Xavier Worthy, if they should sell high on him after what he did. And I don't want to sell high necessarily, but I also don't know if I want to go there this week in DFS. So like season long, I keep him, hold. He's a hold there. But for DFS, salary 62, whereas Rashee Rice is 69. And Rice had a bajillion targets in that game. Got the 100-yard bonus, 9 targets. They weren't downfield, but like you watch him and he's put in a perfect position to generate yards after the catch. So like I'm okay with that. And his salary is also $6,900. So Mahomes paired with Rice, bring back of, honestly, I'm okay going back to Andre Yoshivas if he played every snap last week. Salary $5,200. I'm okay with Jamar Chase, given we'll have the salary to get to a Mahomes, Rice, Chase lineup. I really like Rashee Rice this week. Where are you on the Chiefs pass catchers?
Yeah, I really like Rice. You laid that out. I'm with you with Worthy. Like season long, I wouldn't try to trade him because his role is probably going to expand. In DFS though, he's gonna have games where it's like, oh yeah, I should have used Xavier Worthy, and then they're gonna have games probably where it's like, okay, he didn't outrun everyone on one of his 4 design plays, so like I shouldn't have used him in the 6,000 range. That's a little like simplified, but I think that's just gonna be what we get from Worthy, and I really wouldn't want to get rid of him in case they make him an integral part of the offense, which frankly they could and should. This team still does also spread the ball around a lot. Red zone work, targets outside of Rice, going to be kind of, and Kelsey, but we have to talk about Kelsey too. But with Yosivas, yeah, we were there last week. Every snap, 91% of the routes, 6 targets, 3 of which were downfield. Just didn't have anything on them because the whole offense struggled, but it's appealing in a bring back environment. Yosivas or like Jalen McMillan?
Probably should be Yosivas.
It should be. If there's no T, if there's T, that's a different conversation. But so then DeMarcus Robinson, Yosivas, McMillan in that order.
You agree?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. You mentioned Kelsey, salary $74. I'd rather spend down personally. As much as I like this Chiefs team, I'd rather go there via Mahomes, Rice, and Pacheco. Not as into Kelsey. Where are you at there? He could drop a 3 touchdown game in my head, so like maybe I should be there. And I'm going to use Mahomes, so like I'm going to have some Kelsey, but I don't think I'll have him as in non-Mahomes lineups.
Yeah, if you like Mahomes to that degree, I think you have to like Kelsey.
Yeah.
83% of the routes, just 4 targets, 15% target share, 1 red zone target. Like, I don't know. Objectively, not worth 74. Subjectively, knowing what the potential is and having the touchdowns go his way. And frankly, Mahomes was a touchdown regression candidate in the positive sense entering this year. So like
they were projected as my like 4th ranked offense to score more points this year than they did last year. And like they did that in week 1. So against a Baltimore defense that had a lot of changeover, but is still pretty good. So I think my biggest aversion to Kelsey is his mustache sucks and he should shave it. Bring the beard back. Like, come on, man. Like be better than this.
Favorite play here, but is it Rice or is it Pacheco?
Pacheco.
Yeah.
But I think that Pacheco and Rashee Rice are both standalone plays for me. I will use them outside of game stacks pretty happily. The pitch
now,
for
what's
Pacheco,
your favorite stack? Oh, sorry.
Pitch for Pacheco, talking about him quick, is that he played an 80% snap rate last week, second highest for him, or higher than every game except for one. No, it's second highest career. He had a 90% snap rate in like a week 17 game last year, I think. 80% snap rate, 15 carries, 3 targets, had a bad drop. But then Samaje Perine later also had a bad drop, so I don't think that'll impact him too much. And the Bengals lost DJ Reader this offseason. They got torched by Ramondre Bleepin Stevenson and the Patriots offense. No shots at Ramondre. It's about the offense. Last week. And now it's Pacheco at home as a big favorite. Didn't erupt last week, so probably not going to catch as much attention as he should. I think Pacheco is like one of the running back priorities on this slate. Where are you on him?
Yeah, I think he's preferable here to. We're gonna do the salary scroll, but nobody in the 7K range really caught my attention among running backs other than Pacheco. Everyone else kind of has some concerns.
I agree with that.
So not that we necessarily are going to need to save a ton of salary, but Pacheco's, I think his ceiling is higher than 74. Mm-hmm. He's my favorite way to get exposure to this game. What's your favorite stack here, though? Does it include then? Is it Mahomes and Rice with Chase, or is it more of like?
I think my favorite stack with Mahomes. I think that my most
no. I'm saying like you're building a lineup and you're including this game in it. Is it Mahomes and Rice, or is it Pacheco and Chase? I'm assuming it's Chase on both sides, but
yeah, probably. It depends on what other stacks I have in here. Like if I have Kyler Cup and I'm allocating a lot of salary there, then Pacheco Yoshivas would be a consideration for me.
Okay.
But like given the salaries elsewhere, realistically, Mahomes, Rice, Chase, I use the savings to stack this game. That's pretty attractive. Any
Burrow?
No.
In a potential bounce back?
I'm not worried about the risk because like I think he's just keeping it warm. I know he's like flexing it a lot, but like he had surgery on it. He said he was keeping it warm. I tend to believe him because like in the situations you do want to keep flexing it to like keep it okay. So I'm not worried about that. It's more so just like Chiefs defense is pretty good, even with no L'Jarius Sneed. So I don't know. What about you? If T were to play, I'd be higher on Burrow, though. I'll say that.
Yeah, hair's kind of looking like mine in this new.
This is pre-bleach.
I know.
So you went from Jimmy
like
Butler hair to the bleach hair, and vibes are not great.
Yeah, my hair's growing down over my eye now, just like that.
You gotta, if you go bald, man, you don't have to worry about it. It's my pitch. Any other thoughts for you on this game?
I don't think so.
Okay, let's transition now into our trend section. Trimming this down to 2 trends per week because we wanted to spend more time having discussion at the end as far as players we like, salary scroll, more time in the bookmaker section. So just 2 trends per week now. Let's begin with yours, Brandon. You track pass rate over expectation over on FanDuel Research. You do a weekly article there, and you're looking at teams that had the biggest change from last year to week 1. What did you notice as far as teams that decided to go up or down there?
Yeah, these numbers come from, I never know if it's NFL Faster or Fast R, and I'm never going to find out. So just
don't tell me.
I don't know how to find out, but I'm going to leave it there. But pass rate over expectation, it'll take every play. There's, pre-snap variables, win probability, down and distance, score different, like all that stuff. And it says teams would throw this frequently. If you throw or run, you kind of adjust for all that. So basically it's better than raw pass rate because it'll account for game context, teams getting blown out or blowing out opponents. This helps adjust for that. Now, week to week pass rate over expectation can vary a bit. So I'm not saying these are all gospel, but in the larger scheme of things, I think pass rate over expectation has, yes, there's team by team like applications that we'll try to kind of, put at the end of this, but there were some league-wide trends that are worth discussing. Pass rate over expectation was down for the league. Pace suffered as a result. Fewer plays went around in week 1. and there were more rushing touchdowns with 36 than passing touchdowns of 35 in week 1. So there hasn't been a majority of rushing touchdowns according to Pro Football Reference since 1956. It's been at least 60% of scrimmage touchdowns have been passing over the last 15 years. Also in week 1, we saw the score per rate drive tie a 27-year high, which is as far back as Pro Football Reference has the data. So yeah, there were more rushes, fewer plays, but scoring in terms of frequency on a per drive basis was up. Turnover rate was a 27-year low as well, less probability of interceptions. I'm assuming it's more of a week 1 blip than a brand new change for passing trends within the NFL, but I wanted to point that out because I think it's worth considering as we transition into the early phase of 2024, and frankly being cognizant of the fact that, okay, if a lot of running backs scored touchdowns, maybe this week it's a lot of passing touchdowns, and that changes things. So it's just something to keep in the back of your mind, where history says probably should see a lot of passing touchdowns this week, unless this is a brand new NFL, which probably not thinking is the case. The most pass heavy teams overall, not really surprising, Cincinnati and Kansas City. But third and fourth were the Rams and the Bears. The Rams were actually pretty run heavy in terms of pass rate over expectation last year. They were below average, 21st. The Bears were 27th. Kind of expected there for the Bears. But other notable outliers in terms of climbing were the Cardinals. Minus 1.8% pass rate over expectation in week 1, which is up from minus 6.5%. Pretty noticeable there. And the Browns were a positive, almost 1%, up from minus 4% last year.
Run the ball.
So
man.
There were a lot of other outliers like the other way. The Jaguars were down a ton in a game where, I don't know, they probably should have tried to score more and maybe throw it a little bit more, but it is what it is. The 49ers, minus 11%. I think it's kind of just understandable given the game script. And while pass rate over expectation does adjust for all the game context, they were just running the ball at will for the most part. So why bother? The Commanders were down, which I think is as expected, shifting to potentially one of the better rushing quarterbacks in football from a really pass heavy approach with Sam Howell. That's going to be bad news for the one pass catcher who we find relevant in the offense with Terry McLaurin, whose birthday is this weekend for a birthday narrative. So, and then the Chargers, as expected, they were a minus 7. They were positive last year, which is kind of the same trend for the Bills, who I think like midway through the second quarter, Josh Allen had like 4 pass attempts, and I was sweating.
Yeah. It was not great.
So I don't know if that's going to stick, but it is noteworthy. And I think it will stick for the Chargers, which is kind of relevant because we did see a breakout performance from one of their running backs. But, if I just list out all the teams, they're going to lose meaning. So I kind of want to let's recalibrate here. The Rams, I think, kind of quietly to me, run heavy last year. I think they could sling it a little bit more, but it's going to depend on their offensive line. I think it's a good sign for Cooper Kupp, though. And I'm going to just take that as a unabashed positive in that sense. The Bears, I think, are as expected, not going to be nearly as run heavy. That's great news for DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. They've got a new OC and skill players. The Cardinals, second-year offensive coordinator, but like a healthy Kyler, some weapons. I think they could be fun this year. The Jaguars, a team we're not going to talk about them much this week because they're playing the Browns, but lowered volume potentially if they are trying to be a little bit more run heavy. Enough mouths to feed where things could get dispersed. Just something to keep in mind more for how this progresses moving forward. The Commanders, again, they're not super DFS relevant outside of Jaden Daniels and potentially Terry McLaurin, but it's bad for McLaurin as much as I want to get there because I like him. Chargers, as expected, it's going to be tough to get there for the pass catchers. And then the Colts, I did not mention them, but boy, they ran the ball a ton. They didn't have a lot of plays. I think they had 20 minutes of possession, which I think was the lowest in week 1. But they could just hand the ball off to Taylor and run it with Anthony Richardson. And while Michael Pittman, I think, had a 42% target share, that might not matter. Alec Pierce, our guy, went off. Ashton Doolin, my guy, went off.
Last year, I just said, no, don't tie me to this. But this year, yes, I will happily take my association with Alec Pierce, who is on the bench in a lot of my dynasty leagues.
But Michael Pittman, 42% target share for 8 targets. I think it could be a little bit. They probably should run the ball with JT and Richardson. So I think those are kind of the most noteworthy trends. Again, I'm not going to overreact and say, hey, week 1 is super indicative. The R squared value for like full season stuff it's not great, but I think it's noteworthy here. What stands out to you here? And I think more importantly, potentially as I dug in more, what about the league-wide trend?
Yeah. I think the league-wide trend, I agree with you, where it's probably going to be a blip. I think we'll see it might be more run-heavy this year than last year because rushing has been pretty efficient, but not going to worry about it too much. Yeah. You view the Chargers thing as being a negative, and it is for Herbert and Ladd McConkey. But what if it's actually a positive for J.K. Dobbins? $6,800. I got a question on YouTube about him earlier on from Geek Hippie. Is Dobbins a play? Very much so. At 68, he looked awesome. He looks great whenever he's healthy. And now facing Carolina, who just put Derek Brown on IR, got torched by the Saints last week. Like, I know it's a negative for Herbert, but like arrow's up on J.K. Dobbins, right? And a guy we can definitely feel good about.
Arrow is up. Didn't really have the breakaway separation speed that you want to see necessarily, but a 61% first.
Hey, I mean, he got a breakaway chance, and not a lot of guys get that. You gotta get in the open field to get chased down, man.
Sure. Good success rate, great. Obviously, EPA per carry numbers. I think the real thing here is like, stocks up on Dobbins, separating from Gus Edwards. Does that stick? Probably after what we saw, sure. But still a 60% snap rate. I mean, 59%. But was more involved as a pass catcher.
Yeah.
Which I think is noteworthy. So I'm fine. But I do kind of feel like this is a situation where you historically, if you're like, it's a 59% snap rate, it's not the most efficient, best offense. He still kind of was not.
I think it might be pretty efficient though. Like Jim Harbaugh has his flaws, but he always has efficient offenses. And their tackles looked like, are we allowed to say the A word? BA? They look like BAs. I don't know. I don't want to get the explicit tag. Bad butts in week 1 with Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt. So like, I kind of think they might be efficient, even if they're not super fun, like from a Herbert perspective.
Would you like Dobbins as much in a more difficult matchup at 68, or is it factoring in the matchup?
Factoring in the matchup, factoring in the potential for slightly increased snap rate based on how good he was. Like his snap rate in the second half was pretty similar to what it was in the first half, but also a lot of his big runs came in the second half. So I think that there are a couple reasons to be intrigued there at least. Pacheco's a better play at 74 than Dobbins 68, but like Dobbins will be one of my core plays.
I'm not going to push back.
Okay.
Just can't bring it back with anyone. So that's always a little bit of a negative for me.
No, don't do that. I will also say that the Bears stuff is intriguing for the DJ Moore Tank Dell stacks. So I like that for sure. Okay. Let's talk about my first trend here, my one trend. And that's about running backs with high snap rates, but not the best box score numbers in week 1. Last year on the show, I did a trend in week 2 about which stats are stickiest from week 1 to week 2 for running backs. Snap rate was number 1, followed by red zone share. We might talk red zone share next week on the show, but I wanted to look at some players who played a ton of snaps last week who might not have popped in the traditional box scores. This may make them players we can buy before people realize how good their roles are. And those guys specifically, the 3 most noteworthy to me are Jonathan Taylor, Kyren Williams, and Isaiah Pacheco. Taylor and Williams both played 90% of the snaps for their team. Actually, JT was like 95, 96. Pacheco, 80%. That was the second highest mark of his career. Okay game, 15 carries, 3 targets, 78 yards from scrimmage. But now he's at home as a big favorite against a Bengals rush defense that got thrashed in week 1 by a much worse offense. I think we got to go to Pacheco here. Williams, 18 carries. This is Kyren Williams, 18 carries and 3 targets for 54 yards. Detroit, though, spent big resources on making their rush defense better this offseason. DJ Reader didn't play in that game, but like they were pretty good against the rush last year too. So I think that that's fine. Wouldn't expect a huge showing out of Kyren there. In 2 games against the Cardinals last year, 181 yards from scrimmage per game, pretty good. If he goes even a bit overlooked with attention on Cooper Kupp, Demarcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson, Kyren could be an amazing play. JT's salary comes down to 82, no targets, and I think that's a legitimate concern because Anthony Richardson, if you're not 78 yards downfield, you're probably not getting the ball. Not win a lot of 50-50 balls downfield. But again, faced a good rush defense for the Texans, now facing a Packers team that Saquon Barkley scorched last week. So not only do all 3 of those guys have good snap rates, but they're in better matchups now than they were in week 1. So I know Jordan Mason will be 90%er type guy if McCaffrey does not go, but I want to make sure I'm above the field on all 3 of these guys: Jonathan Taylor, Kyren Williams, Isaiah Pacheco, under the assumption they won't get as much attention as they should because the box score undersells them. So where are you on those 3 guys and any other players you want to toss in there for week number 2?
Yeah, with Taylor in particular, one of the most interesting notes I had was he had no targets, but 18 routes, which was a 75% route rate. I know we can joke that like he's probably not gonna see a target if he's not standing in the Alex Pierce zone 60 yards downfield, but that's in no way am I going to be able to spin that as a negative. You run 3/4 of the routes, you're probably going to catch a pass or 2. But every red zone snap for JT available. And again, it was just kind of that was like a good game, but it was also a strange game just in terms of like time of possession and how much, like how in control the Texans kind of were despite the game being close. We know we saw the role be what it was. He's going to be able to run the ball efficiently long term. The EPA per carry numbers weren't great, but the success rate numbers were quite good or good enough. So I'm there with Taylor. Who else did you throw out here?
Kyren and Pacheco.
Kyren and Pacheco. Yeah, Kyren's really appealing. We kind of went over him already in detail, but workload was the snap rate, as you're talking about here, way better than I expected. I thought it would kind of be, down. No Blake Corum. I think that's a huge vote of confidence. So I'm there. And yeah, we talked Pacheco as well.
Yeah.
Where might not be my favorite running back in a vacuum.
Sure.
But boy, he's up there. So
yeah, I think so too.
This is the kind of stuff that I think we need to be looking at. The snap rates, not so much just the yardage in production, because
I think that's where the week 2 edge lies is doing that kind of stuff for sure. Okay. Yeah. Weather for this week, the only elevated winds right now are in Charlotte for the Panthers and Chargers. Doesn't matter because we're not going to pass game piece there, really just J.K. Dobbins. And there's a chance of rain in Nashville for the Jets and Titans, the Corey Davis Bowl. Not going to worry about that one too much either. So let's go now position by position and break down our top plays on FanDuel for this week. The way we're going to do this is, as Brandon alluded to, if you're a longtime Heat Check listener, we did a salary scroll back on the old recap podcast. We're going to do that here. The large reasoning is because we change our minds as the show goes along. We talk more about this stuff. We realize, okay, I actually like this guy more than I thought I would. So we're going to do that position by position here, break down our top plays for DFS for this week. So Brandon, just going through quarterback, who is standing out to you there?
Yeah, I think another thing too here is I would talk Lamar as a love potentially. Jim probably wouldn't talk about him too much. We got to figure out we'll kind of figure out how this goes, but what is it with Lamar that you're not interested in? Is it specifically the matchup?
Game environment. I can't run it back with any Raiders. I think that defense is good enough. His salary's $8,800. I don't want to use a quarterback in a game that I don't want to stack, and I have zero interest in stacking that game. Zay Flowers, fine as a standalone play. Maybe Isaiah Likely, maybe Mark Andrews, but they're all maybes.
I don't know. I feel like Lamar is the inevitable, and it doesn't particularly matter with the game environment as much.
Is he a cash game play for you?
In consideration for sure.
Okay.
I mean, he had 16 carries for 122 yards. I think it was 8 and 8 designed in scrambles. 6 designed, 10 scrambles, 122 yards. So he did get that bonus. frankly, Lamar Jackson's the one quarterback who you can put in the conversation for he could have 100 rushing yards. It's a kind of a fluke if anyone else gets there. 273 passing yards. I know like passing volume was up, but he's got pass catchers. My model had him for the second most expected total touchdowns of anyone other than Baker last week. I think this game could have been way better for Lamar. If he had that touchdown to Likely at the end of the game, he's coming off of like a 34-point game facing the Raiders, who I know you like their defense, but I mean, J.K. Dobbins kind of did some stuff on the ground against them. Like,
sure.
I'm just higher on Lamar. By talking through this with you, I guess I'm kind of getting a little scared. Maybe I'm just not seeing things, but man, I don't think there's anything to worry about here.
I can already, like, I am reading right now the Slack message at 1:30 p.m. Eastern, you saying I should have had more Lamar.
Yeah.
I know that's going to happen. So don't let me talk you out of him. I'm just saying this is my
60% red zone rushing share still. And
that game stinks.
Apparently they didn't bring in Derrick Henry to give him 30 carries a game. So,
although I will say if that total goes down a half more point, I would show value in the over. So we're getting close, but no, I'm good. I bet me Mahomes versus Jackson straight up.
The other thing here is I would make that bet because
bet me.
We can talk game environment. Baltimore just went out and lost their first game. This is a team with Super Bowl aspirations. I don't think that they're going to come out and get surprised or limited by the Raiders.
I also think that was the biggest game of the year for them because there was a team that beat them in the playoffs last year. I think they had a lot of motivation to win that game, which is probably why Lamar had 8 design rushes. I think they're going to realize that you can't run this guy who said he lost weight in the offseason. He's down to 210, 205. I am not having 8 design runs for Lamar Jackson per game.
It was 6 out of 16. I clarified because I screwed that up. I think
he scrambled 10 times.
Yeah.
Stop it. Don't do that. I want him healthy.
This team needs to come back and win. And I think it's going to go through Lamar.
So you're taking my Mahomes versus Lamar bet?
I would take that head. Right. Yeah. Straight up DFS points. Yeah.
Richardson. Yeah. Yay or nay? Because I'm not there.
It's going to be interesting because they just didn't run a lot of plays last week and they were really run heavy.
Yeah.
You want rushing quarterbacks who throw the ball. He was hyper efficient because he was chucking it deep to the new Randy Moss. I'm
Alec Pierce.
This is a situation where I'm more concerned about the game environment and a lack of bringbacks than Lamar.
Okay, fair enough. I'm not going to be there. CJ Stroud I will use. He's not a core play for me. I think that my core plays, as I scroll through here, are going to wind up being Kyler Murray and Patrick Mahomes. I like the game environment for both. I have obvious stack candidates on both sides. And I have bring back players that I can feel good about for both of them. So as I look at this quarterback player pool as a whole, I think if you give me 2 lineups, I'm going 1 Kyler, 1 Mahomes. And if I'm doing multi, I am getting the iterations of those 2 players that are stack candidates and bringbacks, and then filtering in the other guys after that. Are you okay with making those 2 guys core plays beyond the Lamar discussion?
Kyler more so than Mahomes.
Okay. What's your main hang up with Mahomes?
That he just doesn't have to do it all like I think Lamar has to.
Okay. Fair enough. I disagree. I don't think he has to do it all to do it, but I think he'll still be able to do it all.
I think the best case for Mahomes is that you just think that the Bengals can't stop anyone. And I'm not convinced that that's the case just yet.
It could be, though. That's why we're in week 2.
And it could be that the fact that the Raiders let up big plays to J.K. Dobbins means that they could let up big plays to Lamar Jackson.
41.5 point total. Okay. Scrolling down further. Anything stand out to you at quarterback? Stroud in your player pool?
He's on the cusp. Okay. It's Stroud versus Jaden Daniels is, I think, the real conversation. Ran a lot last week. Giants struggled to stop the Vikings.
Yeah. Would you stack Jaden Daniels with Terry McLaurin or no?
I sure would. It's Terry's birthday on Sunday, if I'm not mistaken,
yeah,
and
that's
that matters. What's his salary?
McLaurin,
I know we're not there yet, but
he is $6,000. Only down 200 from last week.
I mean, you'd give me a Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors.
Yeah, it could be fun. No, that's fair. Okay,
Carry
you talked me into it. Once you said Malik Neighbors, I was in. All right. Okay. Anything else you want to shout out at quarterback? Any Dak?
That game is going to be really interesting. I'm not sure how it goes. What's your model's view of that game? Because I don't think we got a good read on either of those teams based on how week 1 went.
I took the under in large part because I think that New Orleans keeps that game pretty close. So that could mean that it's better for shootouts if both sides are going to score some points. But probably not getting to Dak. Marshawn Lattimore didn't practice Wednesday, which may bump up the Cowboys, but probably not getting to Dak. Who is your favorite 7,000 range quarterback not named Jaden Daniels?
Oh, that makes it hard. Probably between Goff, Baker, and maybe Justin Fields, just as like I don't know. He's going outdoors. He was indoors. He ran a lot. Couldn't score. So I'm probably low on Fields. I think it's worth shouting out, though.
Yeah.
Maybe Baker.
Okay. I'm probably highest in Goff of that group, personally.
That's the easiest answer, yeah, I think.
Okay, who are your loves at quarterback if we narrow things down?
Lamar and Kyler.
Okay, I'm going Mahomes and Kyler, personally, with Jaden Daniels and CJ Stroud being the other two guys I'd shout out there. Running back, I say we do the Jordan Mason thing first. Like, We're not going to get any other running backs at $5,500. If there is no McCaffrey, Mason again, as we said, 90% kind of consideration guy, no-brainer player you put in for cash games. No other thoughts on him personally. Anything for you on Mason?
No, we're good.
Okay. I agree with you about the wonkiness of the 8,000 range at running back. Breece Hall's in a matchup I don't love against Tennessee. That defense looked really good last week against Caleb Williams. He's going to get a lot of usage. Last week, Breece Hall, he had 16 carries, 6 targets, 93 yards in scrimmage. Didn't get a lot of work in the red zone. That went to Allen Lazard and Garrett Wilson more so, but I don't think that's a long-term thing for him. So I prefer
96% first half snap rate for him.
Yeah. He was in the game on the final drive, and I don't know why. They eventually switched to Braylon Allen, which was good. But like, if you're going to take out Aaron Rodgers, take out Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson too. I didn't understand that at all.
Yeah, just another situation though where this team did not look good in one of the toughest potential matchups on the road Monday night. It's a short week. Yeah. What do they have game planned? Is it to feed Breece Hall?
I think it's tough against this defense. Yeah.
There aren't many defenses that I will like go away from.
Yeah.
I
think it'd need a better
I'll
offense.
defer to you. I'll defer to you because you do a lot with defenses and run defense.
I would need a better offense to be okay with them. Like, I think the Jets are still like average at best offense. So I need a better offense to go there. 8,000 range guys of Jonathan Taylor, Joe Mixon, Kyren Williams. Who is your preference between that trio? Because I think all three are very much in play.
Should be. Oh, that's a tough one.
Yeah, they're all pretty fun.
Like you said, I like all of them.
Yeah.
It's not, but Mixon's not in that conversation right now.
Is he in your player pool?
He would be third.
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
Okay. I think so too, but I agree that he's below these two guys.
I think I'd have to go Jonathan Taylor due to the sheer how good he is and what Saquon Barkley did to Green Bay last week.
Let us not forget JT back in Wisconsin narrative. Played at Madison, back up there. A lot of Midwest narratives in play this week. So JT back at Lambeau could be kind of fun. I don't know if you ever played there. I know they had a game against LSU there. I'm not sure if that was when he was in college, but the JT in Wisconsin narrative should not be overlooked this week.
I'm not going to elaborate on some narrative, even though I brought up Terry McLaurin's birthday.
Well, it's Zay Flowers' birth week, so that's important to remember too. So you're going JT 1, Kyren 2, Mixon 3?
Of those, yeah.
I'm probably going to go Kyren 1, JT 2, Mixon 3. But the edge between Kyren and JT is pretty small, and I think both those guys are priorities for this week. Any Kamara 78 for you?
Boy, interesting usage yet again. Just not. Again, it comes down to I don't know how this game's going to play out because they both just easily won. I'll put it that way in the nicest terms in week 1. So I don't know if we got a good feel for intended usage. Kamara ended with a sub 50% snap rate, but he was at almost 60% in the first half. Still 110 scrimmage yards because he's really good at football.
He gets a lot of targets.
5 targets, over a 20% target share. I want to get there. It would be more of a game stack situation. I do think, though, if we're being honest, if we have Mason, we have Jameson, or just frankly, other value receivers, if you're not considering like a Kamara CeeDee Lamb stack, then what are we doing here?
Also like an Olave or Shaheed Lamb game stack.
Sure, yeah. But like, if you're not using salary to get to these guys who
you're right,
can make changes, you're probably not doing it right.
I think that's fair. Okay, scrolling down further, if you love Lamar, are you on Henry?
Why would that be relevant?
Well, because you're looking at the Ravens.
No, his usage was terrible.
All right, fair enough. I agree. We can move past it.
And they came out and said they didn't bring him in to give him like 30 carries a game. So
I agree. Let's move on. Pacheco, core play, correct?
Basically, yeah. He's in the conversation for like, if not for Mason, he'd be in conversation for RB1.
I agree. ETN, I'm not going to get there. Tank Bigsby looked really good in week 1. ETN had 5 out of 6 red zone carries, but on one of them he fumbled at the goal line, and then Bigsby 5 of 11 snaps after that. It's not amazing, like not any. And they also ran 11 plays, which is insane how low that number was. So I'm not going to get there. Montgomery, tough rushing matchup. He'll be fine, but I don't think he'd burn me for not using him. Not going to get to Jacobs. No Aaron Jones. No Ramondre. Dobbins will be next up for me as a guy at 68 I like. Did I pass over anyone you like / want to use? Yeah.
No. So I guess the name here, and as we're learning the salary scroll, Ramondre Stevenson, huge game. What do we do?
Don't care.
Okay.
I don't want exposure to that offense. Like his role was really good, but.
Yeah, give me Dobbins over Ramondre then.
Okay, cool. Pollard, no.
Pollard's role was solid, but not more of a season-long solid than a DFS solid.
James Conner, 65. Now that we know more of the lay of the land, we know we got J.K. Dobbins, who we're receptive to. We love Pacheco. Really like the high $8,000 or the $8,000 running backs. Where does Conner wind up for you after all that discussion?
He's going to be someone I'm probably lower on than I want to be due to the fact that I have salary to go up. But are you more likely to go like Mason and Connor so that you can spend up more at receiver, or take more of the value receivers so that you can get like Mason plus Kamara or whoever else up there you like?
Having Kupp or Kyron in there increases the odds I use Connor as a bring back. But like, if I'm not considering that, I'd rather get up to Pacheco. Like, I think my ideal is Mason, Pacheco, one of the $8,000 running backs. So Connor probably at best going to wind up being the RB5 or 6 for me, which is fine.
Yeah, that's kind of where I think I am. I like him, but I'm probably going to be lower on him than I.
And if Charbonnet plays with no Walker, we're going Connor over Charbonnet or no?
I would, yeah.
Okay, I agree. Any other running back shouts for you?
People might ask about like Alexander Madison in a negative game script, but I'm not there. Or Justice Hill is like a punt play, not there either.
I agree.
Even though I like Lamar, who I think might run 20 times. I don't think he'll run 20 times, but just to clarify for Jim, if I like the guy who runs more than any other quarterback and runs better, doesn't mean I like his.
I mean, you said Jaden Daniels in your core, so I get it. Okay. I'm giving you one high salaried receiver slot to burn with all the savings via Jordan Mason. Is it CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Justin Jefferson, or Jamar Chase?
I'm telling you right now, it's between CeeDee and Amon-Ra. CeeDee Lamb is the perfect type of like, oh yeah, CeeDee Lamb's good, but it is what it is. He had 10 targets in a
3
game
rush attempts.
Where it just, again, it didn't really give us a great feel for like what this team wants to do. But the one thing that we saw was that they want to get the ball to CeeDee Lamb. So I'm good with that. 3 downfield targets, double-digit ADOT. So I'd go CeeDee because the odds he has a 40% target share in a game somehow higher than Amon-Ra St. Brown's whenever that was kind of Amon-Ra's claim to fame. So I'd go CeeDee Lamb, I think, here.
I think I go Lamb 1 as well, and I might go Chase 2 just because I'll stack that game quite a bit.
I just have more. I don't know. I have concerns. I have concerns about how bad Cincinnati looked and how good Detroit looked and how little St. Brown kind of got the ball. What about Garrett Wilson for you?
$8,100 the salary. L'Jarius Sneed in Tennessee now. If I'm going to allocate 81 to a receiver, I want it to be in a game that I want to stack. And like, I just don't want to stack. I don't want to touch this game personally. So like the usage is great. And like he could burn me, but I think I just rather get up to Lamb, rather use Chase, I know we're not as high on Mike Evans we were last week, but like I'd still use him over Wilson at $88,000. And then Cup, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. With Cup so close and Evans there, I'm not going to play any Garrett Wilson.
Okay. 7,000 range at wide receiver. Obviously, Cooper Kupp is a standout at 77. I love Debo at 73. Would like to get to Ayuk at 7,000. So the 7,000 range is pretty good. Any thoughts for you on this range?
I'm in lockstep. I think, again, I'm going to probably say this a lot as we figure this out. I'm loving the salary scroll because it's bringing into play people who I wouldn't talk about otherwise. Mm-hmm. What about Devontae Adams?
No. No.
All right.
No.
All right.
6,000 range Rashee Rice. I think the 6,000 range is better than the 7,000 range, even though I like it. Are we flexing a receiver this? No. I like the running backs too.
It's it's more viable than
because like we got Rashee Rice 69, DJ Moore 68. I don't hate Olave at 67 alongside Lamb. Keenan Allen, we talked about 65. Marv and Neighbors both in play. Zay 63, Godwin 62. Like in Tank, of course, 6,000. Like the 6,000 range at receiver is pretty nuts, and I think it's great.
Yeah, Tank 61, just to clarify. Sorry. But I mean, yeah, it's really interesting. Almost too many options, which is kind of why, again, I'm going to say it once more. If we had to pick 3 loves, it's probably Kupp and Jameson.
Yep.
For each of us, and then one of these other names. This is all game stack dependent, but what this allows me to do, Chris Olave would not be one of my loves because I think there's enough concern. But doing it this way lets me call out that Olave, frankly, is one of the best receivers in football, and they just did not have to throw the ball at all. Rashid Shaheed caught the long touchdown. Again, like, it is what it is. Now, I will say, like Chris Olave, 2 targets, under 10% target share. I'm not saying like there were no pass attempts or anything, but route rate, first half numbers, red zone numbers, being on the field, great. Eventually, that's going to change. Chris Olave's ceiling is that of an $8,000 receiver
100%.
In a game that could be back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
So Chris Olave in game stacks, I think, again, Olave and Lamb, if you have salary, that's something you should at least think about.
Oh, and you will have salary. So yeah.
Like that's this week we have it. Let's say there's no Mason, Jameson salaries 68 or something. It's a lot harder to justify. I'd be like, probably not going to be able to do Olave and Lamb. This week, if you don't love Lamar, like Jim hates him, thinks he's the worst play of all time.
Agreed.
I'm not as into Mahomes. Kind of by default, you're going down in like the 8,000 range for a quarterback. You're going to have ways like to spend up. I think Olave deserves attention there.
I agree. And DJ Moore will be in game stacks. Keenan Allen, I'd like to get a full practice by Friday, but we'll go there. Malik Neighbors briefly is just facing Washington. I think it's as simple as that. 1 week to get acclimated, now facing this Washington defense. 7 targets there. Wan'Dale Robinson had more targets, but Neighbors got some good high leverage looks. Like, he's not going to be as popular as he should, correct?
Correct. And again, perfect example of someone I've interest in, but wouldn't call a love. Yeah. There's already the squeaky wheel narrative, which truly he's like, I think it was taken out of context. And I think the tweet that I saw was deleted, but it was like, I don't know what's going on back there with Daniel Jones. And I think it was more like, I think it was supposed to be more like, yeah, I'm running my routes. Like, I don't see everything that's happening back there. I'm not sure, but the way you get him the ball is to throw it to him. He had a 96% route rate in his debut, similar to like Marv, where the routes were there. He had more volume than Marv, but it's only a matter of time before he gets the ball. And in this matchup, like super appealing, super fun. Even if I don't bring it back with Terry, I could see like Neighbors, Jaden Daniels stacks,
sure,
just to see how it looks, and go from there.
I think that's totally fine. You talked me into a McLaurin, Jaden Neighbor stack as well. Tank priority play for me at $6,100. Talked about that before. Tournaments only. I don't think he's got the usage for a cash game, but for tournaments, adore him. Scrolling down to Jameson, did I miss anyone that you wanted to touch further on?
Between Tank and Jameson, no.
Okay, yeah. So Jameson Williams, 57. Traditional love for the podcast. I see no reason to. I mean, roster rates, fine. You can make that pitch as a reason to go away, but that's about it. Any other? Ooh, Rashid Shaheed, $5,500. The need for Rashid or need for Shaheed?
Hey man, it's up to you.
Okay.
I will shout out. Oh god, do you have more?
Nope.
Brandon Cooks, 90% first half snap rate. All 4 of the red zone snaps. 7
if Jake Ferguson can't go, Cooks gets bumped up.
And Jake Ferguson, not certain what that is.
Yeah.
And I will say, like, Jackson Smith and Jigba, you called him out last week. Roll was pretty, like, he was on the field a lot, didn't get a lot of looks. You out on him now?
Earn 1 downfield target in your entire life, and then I'll go back.
Okay.
But I do like McMillan, 52, Yoshi Voss, 52, DeMarcus Robinson, 52. I'm just going to let game stacks dictate where I go between those 3. I don't think any of them is like a single lineup kind of play. Correct. Robinson more so than the others.
Sure.
But I will use all 3, I think.
Who would be your 3 loves at receiver?
I would go with Jameson Williams, Cooper Kupp, and Tank Dell.
I'd probably go Jameson, Kupp, and Rashee Rice, but Dell would be in the conversation.
Rashee Rice would have been my 4th one. So I think we're aligned there. CeeDee Lamb would have been a pretty, the more I think about him, the more I'm like, yeah, I probably should do that too.
And I probably wouldn't talk about him because like he has a little obvious, but it's like, take a step back. What are the odds he's the highest scoring guy on the slate with potentially no Christian McCaffrey?
They are very good.
Which I guess also, if McCaffrey were to play, what like
10-3 is too high for a guy who would probably be eased in.
I think they should ease him in. They don't.
Yeah, they should.
Really
like they have no reason not to. Yeah. Okay. Tight end Laporta, 2 high salaried. Kelsey only in Mahomes lineups. Andrews only as like a pivot. So the first guy I actually like is Kittle. Where are you at on the high salary guys?
Yeah, I remember doing some trends where it was like, hey, if Mark Andrews is getting ignored, like go there. But he was on the field a lot.
Mm-hmm. Got doubled a lot, apparently. Nate Yonke at Pro Football Focus pointing that out too.
Yeah. I think that he's appealing.
Mm-hmm.
Differentiation stack potential for sure. But I think Kittle's going to be a little more popular than I like.
Okay.
Just seems like people are always into his upside, and it doesn't come about quite as often as it
doesn't come about for any tight end. Oh, super often.
I know.
So I'd rather take the guy who can get me a 20 burger.
Kittle or McBride straight up, like your brother.
McBride.
Yeah,
McBride straight up, but like I want to have some Kittle. I think that like McBride's like a cash game consideration. Yes. Kittle is strictly for tournaments, but a guy I want to make sure is in my player pool.
That's kind of Kittle's never game like head to head.
Unless there's one of Ayuk or Samuel out, then he is.
Sure.
Like then I'll take a lower floor to get the upside there, even in a cash game. The McBride's like kind of the guy at tight end this week, right? Or no?
I think so. I think he's again. I know the production wasn't there, but great role for him. Routes were up, target share was up. Just got to kind of write it off as being a tight end.
Evan Engram, no. What about Isaiah Likely? $5,800. Obviously a very good role last week. He looked awesome. Like I know we're not tape pros, but like I'm okay being a tape pro. Looked great. So $5,800. Probably going to catch a lot of roster rate, but that's fine, right?
Well, he's in maybe not as much environment.
Yeah. Well, like I'm not spending $8,800 at quarterback for it though.
He got targeted on half of his routes, which doesn't stick. So just want to flag that there.
Did you watch him on Thursday night, bro?
46%
DVRing through the game.
Yeah, I saw every play, and I didn't have to sit through the delay and all the commercials. This is my best take. I don't know why I get flack for it. But yeah, the target per route rate just unsustainable. Could have had a second touchdown, and then his salary probably would have been like 64, 65. Yeah. I think it's appealing, but it's not like a no-brainer to me because he got a lot of high leverage looks, but he also got a lot of seemed like he was kind of just wide open because the Chiefs were focused elsewhere.
Yeah, he had 2 deep targets. Zay and Rashad Bateman, shout out Bateman, both had 2 as well. Likely 3 red zone targets. Zay had 2, Justice Hill had 2. I probably should have been higher on Zay, but whatever. Game stinks. Okay, scrolling down further, any low $5,000 tight ends you want to go towards?
I'll shout out Brock Bowers as the lone potential bring back candidate for me in this game. He was limited in practice leading into his first game, and he went out 68% snap rate, 65% route rate with 8 targets, which was 25%. I think he's good. I think it's really kind of just arrows up here. And we kind of say this a lot of different weeks. You can bet against tight end in different ways. If you say none of these tight ends are really going to make me regret not using them, I don't think there's anything wrong with using Brock Bowers here.
What about the same thought process for Taysom Hill again? I know it didn't come through last week, but no one did a tight end. And he had like a full series as an actual running back. And they just didn't need him late in the game. He also got like an end zone target on a go route, which is insane. Clint Kubiak, get your head checked, buddy. Like great first game, but what are we doing there? I think I can go back to him at 52 in a more competitive game.
He's definitely on that. Like, hey, if it's not going to be a 20-point tight end week from anyone, why not Taysom Hill?
Right.
So I'm there as well.
Okay.
So would you consider would you consider punting at all with tight end? Are you that low on tight end?
I don't know who maybe Juwan Johnson. His route rate wasn't great in the first game. Could have been because the game was just so out of whack. Colby Parkinson 48. I would. Yeah, actually. We didn't talk about him earlier on. But 5 targets in the opener, ran a ton of routes. He got a lot of money from them in the offseason, which is like, that was kind of the tell that Logan Thomas is going to be a thing with Washington back in the day, was that they gave him a lot of money. I don't hate Parkinson 48. Probably my favorite quote unquote punt play below 5,000.
I'd like to say Theo Johnson. His usage was pretty good.
Yeah.
Like just his general role. I could see it as just like a bet against tight end there.
Yeah.
4 targets, 87% snap rate against a team that could just be dreadful.
Yeah.
And I already know you're going to hate this, but if we're just kind of looking around at, if we're doing the scroll, Hayden Hurst had a 75% route rate, 2 downfield targets. I think he was one of like 10 tight ends to get multiple downfield targets, had a red zone look and an end zone look.
Revenge game?
Yeah, and a revenge game. So again, it's these names that we wouldn't talk about, but like it's this matchup, etc. Like you could probably do worse if you're looking to completely go elsewhere at tight end.
Okay, who are your loves at tight end after discussing all that?
Trey McBride.
Uh-huh.
I think I'd struggle to find a second true love, which is why I'm talking about guys in the 4,000 range. I might go Brock Bowers.
I would consider, well, McBride is one.
Yeah.
And then the consideration
He's my only true love.
Yeah. Consider my likes at tight end would be Isaiah Likely, fittingly, Taysom Hill, and Colby Parkinson.
Yeah, Parkinson's a good call out, but we're on the same page. We're kind of low on tight end overall.
Okay. Defense you can spend down this week pretty easily. I'm going to start the salary score at the bottom for that reason. Also, because we just do that at defense. I think you can give strong consideration to the Tennessee Titans at 33. I think that defense is just good. And I am okay betting on that, just betting on a good defense. Don't hate the Patriots at 34. Again, a good actual defense. Broncos facing Justin Fields, 34. Not going Giants. Not going Giants. I think you can go towards the Packers at 37. Their defense stinks, and they're probably not going to face a lot of passing volume. So like that makes them more of like an play.
Yeah.
Jags just put a cornerback on IR, good cornerbacks. That does downgrade them, but they're facing Deshaun Watson, so I'm okay with the Jags. And then I think there's one more. Seattle at 4,000. So like Seattle, Jacksonville, maybe Green Bay, but kind of lower on them. Denver, New England, Tennessee, all defenses I like below 4,000. So I can save here as well, in addition to saving at running back with Mason. Any additional thoughts for you at defense?
No, I think you covered them. I think there's a lot of different ways to go and save some salary. So that's going to be even though we have salary to kind of spend, I'm going to try to save it at defense and use it to get to someone like maybe CeeDee Lamb, who breaks the slate potentially.
I think we talked ourselves into being high on CeeDee Lamb. Is that a correct vibe read from you?
I think it's correct. If you're gonna get the benefit of a sub $6,000 running back, and to us a great receiver below 6,000, and potentially a couple other, I don't want to do that just to stack like no offense like Mike Evans, but like I want to aim higher, and CeeDee Lamb's got like 150 and 2 potential anytime. So
I agree. I think I'm really into him right now. Okay. Any final thoughts for you before we close up shop for week 2?
No, I think we were able to cover everything because we went through each position. So we were able to share some notes on that. I think that was appealing. It's going to be a lot of game stacks. I think that's what it comes down to is who do we love most? Mason, Kupp, Jameson, Shore. It depends on game stacks other than that. And that's usually how it works for us. And I think that, doing it this way we were able to kind of convey how we would stack certain games when we build a lineup that stacks those games. So hopefully it was helpful.
I want to reiterate the guys I like most who had good usage in week 1, but didn't produce a ton. CeeDee Lamb actually is in that category. So bumping him up because of that, but then also, Rashee Rice, I think, fits in that category. And then the guys who talk about running back, Isaiah Pacheco, Jonathan Taylor, Kyron Williams. These are the guys we want to buy into for week 2, in addition to Jordan Mason, Jameson Williams, Cooper Kupp. That is all that we have here for this week 2 preview show on the Heat Check. As mentioned, you can find us on the FanDuel TV Plus app. You can also check us out on the FanDuel YouTube page live 10 a.m. every Thursday over there. Leave a thumbs up if you're watching YouTube. We appreciate all of you as always. Of course, you can find this show on the FanDuel Research Podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts. If you want some betting thoughts on the week 2 slate or the week 3 college football slate, check out Covering the Spread by searching for Covering the Spread in your favorite podcast feed over on the FanDuel YouTube page or FanDuel TV Plus as well. Brandon, if people have questions for you on X, where can they find you there?
At Gdula 13, GDULA 13.
And I am on X at Jim Sonis. You can find FanDuel Research on X at FanDuel Research. Want to thank you all for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your bets and your DFS lineups. We'll talk to you once again next Thursday to preview the Week 3 main slate. This has been the Heat Check, a FanDuel Research podcast.